talk to you a bit about what we're doing with Lexalytics. So first off, if you don't know what Bitly is, I'll go over that. Some of the concept topic stuff that we're doing with Lexalytics and why we love it, and then also where we're using that in our products. So first off, if you don't know what Bitly is, we're a link shortener. So we take long URLs and we make them smaller, make them prettier. You can brand them yourself. You can track them so you can see when people are clicking on them and where they are in the world. This happens a lot. So in a day, we get about 50 million URLs that people are shortening. And they're clicked on 30 million times a day. And at our peak, we see 75 new pages per second. So this means these are new pages not only to us, but generally to other search engines also, so they haven't been indexed. And that's a lot of data. So the stuff we see when someone clicks on one is we see their user agent, so we know what browser and platform they're on in the OS. We can see if they have a preferred language set. We extract where they are in the world based off of IP, so we can see this person was in Den Dolder, and we can see what URL they were hitting on. So here it was a vivo.ly link, not just a bit.ly. We have a cookie, but the most important part is that we can see where they were when they were clicking this, so where they were on the internet, basically. So someone was on YouTube, and then they clicked on a link to go look at a Justin Bieber video. And so this is our raw information that we're dealing with. And what we do past this is we process a lot more on the URL level, and that's where Lexalytics comes in. But this is a lot of data, which makes me really excited. So there's about 300 terabytes that we store in our Hadoop cluster, and we get about 4 terabytes of raw streaming data every month. And it's my job and my team's job to figure out what to do with this. So one of the things we do is we have a human filter, so we can look at, based on where people are clicking this link, we can give it a probability that it's a person actually clicking on this. So we know that it's really a human person and not a dog, and not a spammer. Other things we do are we paired up with Bloomberg and we looked at how the Trayvon Martin story spread across space and time. So along the bottom here, you can see how it moved across the US. Darker colors mean that they were paying more attention to it. And along the top there, we have a timeline showing the number of clicks that people were clicking on Trayvon Martin. So here on the left, you can see, well, first it was a very local story. There wasn't much attention to it, but then they released the 911 recordings. President Obama made a comment about it, and you can see it becomes this national news story. And then at the end, you can see when George Zimmerman was accused of murder. But more important stuff that we do is we look to find the best kittens each month on the internet. That's really why I'm there. No. And also we can see how many people are clicking on celebrity URLs. Very important. They really drive the internet. We've also teamed up with Forbes to look at how different media news sites are consumed across the US. So if we were just to look at pure number of clicks, we wouldn't really see much going on. We'd see like the New York Times happening and Huffington Post. But when we look at how each state differs from the average, we can pick out that most interesting or unexpected news site that's being consumed there. So you see things you would expect, like the New York Times is read mostly in the Northeast. You can see Washington, which is where I'm from, is reading the Seattle Times, the LA Times in California, and more interesting is The Onion here in New Mexico. So this can really tell publishers like where they have a natural foothold in the US and where they should maybe like want to ramp up resources or whatnot. Other things we do, so we teamed up with Scientific American, and some of the great part about Bitly is that you generally know what's happening on your website. So Scientific American knows what people are clicking on, but they don't know what those people are doing outside and the rest of the web. So what we did is we looked at all the things that people were looking at after they went to Scientific American, and we categorized them, gave them topics, and said, well, if they were clicking on technology and they're also clicking on health, we created a line there. So the thickness of those lines represent how often people were going to both of those ideas. So here you see some nice clustering around technology, general science, physics, really strong connection to fashion, and then you have chemistry and religion out in the far ends. So it's kind of weird, but very interesting nonetheless. But we do a lot of other stuff. I don't want to bore you with all of it. So you can go check out our GitHub website where we kind of put all the science things that we do. But really, as a scientist, we want to know what is going on the internet. And one of our hypotheses is that it's mostly kittens. And so we want to test this, and it's really hard to do that if we have all this data, and they're all really different URLs. We want to try to combine them in ways that are meaningful and make it some serious stuff. We want to get some real value out of it. So we do this in two ways. We're trying to find content that we can surface to people and also understand the audience of the internet. So to do this, we have bit.ly. Someone clicks on our link. We go to that URL. We scrape the HTML, which is through our content extractor. We find the meaningful bits of it. We send it to Lexalytics to give it topics. And then we surface that back into bit.ly, into our info pages to give back to our customers. So Lexalytics is great because we use salience to define our concept topics. We can make whatever we want. We want to make sure that they're topics that we're interested in, maybe not just as advertisers, but as trying to understand the whole internet. So we want to be able to categorize every URL that's coming in, and we want to make sure that there's low overlap, or if there is overlap, that is important to that URL. So we like that as scientists, we can play around with the taxonomy, so we can define our topics how we want them to be. We can play around with that. And also, it's great for the bit.ly way. So this means that we want our services to do one thing and one thing really well. So we can take responsibility for that service. We don't have to depend on some third party, and if they have problems, we can take responsibility for if our salience instance dies, and we can really dig into that. And we can scale it how we want. Because basically, I just like to see everything that my data is doing. So this is how we feel about using Lexalytics. They're our shampoo. They make everything great. But we also want to make sure, we're using it the right way. So we're spending a lot of time to iterate on that. One of the first ways that we started using the topics from Lexalytics was through our search engine. It definitely does not look like Google. But basically, this was a way that we could go through and understand what all of, we scraped all the content, we can search based on that, we index it on domain, refer, these topics, geography. And then what we've done recently is we have created a wrapper around this so that it's easier for users to get at this information. So here we have our little topic thing. Some of our URLs show what topic they're already having. We're still working on getting that 100% there. But real-time also takes into account what is unexpected and what we wouldn't have thought would be going on the internet. So when we're scraping the content of our URLs, we're also pulling out phrases, our words and our bigrams or trigrams, and we're creating a model based on those so we know how many clicks per second we would expect to see on that phrase, and we know the standard deviation. So if we're seeing 3 times the amount of clicks than we would have expected, we can be like, okay, something's going on here. Let's put this out there because this is really interesting. So last night, apparently, kittens were ruling the world again, and we can find the best kitten. So maybe I was wrong, maybe I was right. Kittens are just everywhere on the internet. It was a really cute video, yes. So the other thing we do is we want to understand the audience of bit.ly. So here's bit.ly, here's the internet. We want to know what's going on there. And really, we probably see a lot more of the internet than most other people do because we're not just on Facebook, we're not just on Twitter, we're on everything. We can be in IMs, we're in emails, we can be on any website that's going on.
Question?
Yes.
What about stuff that doesn't have shortened URL in it?
Yes, that is what we miss.
What's the proportion of tweets, for instance, that have shortened URLs and there are non-bit.ly URL shorteners as well?
Right.
What proportion of tweets do you cover, do you think?
Or around 30%.
Mind repeating the question, please?
Oh, yes, he wondered what our coverage is of how many URLs are bit.ly URLs. So on Twitter, we're around 30%.
Well, how many tweets are bit.ly URLs?
Okay, so how many tweets? They're around 30%. So when Twitter first started, we were all of them, and then they rolled out TICO. But people are still using us because we give back that information to the user. Yes, so where was I? Right. So one of our little toy projects was we looked at the WNYC, which is New York's public radio, and we looked at what URLs their users were also looking at. So this is kind of the co-click thing. And based on pure raw clicks, we could see that 15% of their traffic was also looking at weather. Then there were people looking at politics, business, entertainment, and celebrity. And when we compared this to NPR, which is the national public radio, we could see a different ranking of how people are spending their attention. So you gotta kind of wonder, like, oh, why is weather so much more important to the WNYC? And this is data from October, which I don't know if you were in New York at the time, but I remember this happening. Basically, the cat came in, Hurricane Sandy. So this is really great stuff, right? So we know why they were getting that attention, and we can help them focus on that. So in another way we can look at this is, here's their raw percentages based on clicks, but we can also compare them versus other groups. So we could compare them versus NPR. Here we've compared them versus the average bit.ly audience. So here we could say, well, people that went to WNYC were 3 times more interested in weather than the average person that we see. And then they're 2 times more interested in economics and politics and science and military. And on the right, you can see how they change from month to month. So you can see, like, they're looking at weather 1,000 times more than they would be. So their clicks. So they're like, okay, well, that's abnormal. Hopefully not every month you're going to have a Hurricane Sandy. It's going to do that. But wait, there's more. No. I feel like I'm an infomercial. So other great things that we're doing with this is, for me, I want to understand who my bit.ly soulmate is, because, I mean, I know who I am, but I want to see how I portray myself on the internet. So I want to see, like, what URL, like, what topics am I really putting out there? Kind of like your clout score, but not really, because I don't know how they do it. And then we're also looking at, comparing users to each other. Oh, I forgot the other example. Well, anyways, we're working really hard with this and getting it really interesting. And we're just really happy with Lexalytics. They answer all of my silly questions, like when I lose a license file, they'll give it back to me within a day. So we're just really happy. So thank you. I hope you guys learned something. If you have questions. Yes.
So I wish I were a data scientist. So let me ask you about some of the things based on what you've described that I would be looking at. Can you, at the end you started talking about influence scores. Can you do topic profiles of particular influencers?
Yes. Yes. So he asked, what?
Do you do that?
Do we do it? We're looking into doing that right now. So he asked if we do topic distributions based on influencers. So like, if a person, we can categorize what they're looking at, right? So we are working on that. It's a lot harder to do on the individual basis. So basically there's privacy issues, and also you get more meaning when you aggregate a lot of things. So that's why we're looking more at the domain level, like how would we categorize the people that look at a certain domain?
I have another question, which have you looked at how well bit.ly stacks up against the open social that doesn't include bit.ly links? in order to understand how good a sample retweeted URLs or tweeted URLs are. In other words, you suck in the full Twitter fire hose and do some kind of topic analysis of it, and you compare that to the topic analysis of the tweets that include bit.ly URLs to see how well they match up in order to better understand how the bit.ly universe compares to the full universe.
Right, so he's asked how we would compare our sampling compared to the full Twitter fire hose. So the way I think about that is, I mean, we see a very good sampling of Twitter. We haven't actually looked at the different topic distributions of each one, but since we have information from other sources, we feel confident in that. And we actually have looked into like what percentage of the internet we do cover a bit. We work with VeriSign, and they've given us some of their DNS lookups, so we can see the difference between how many clicks we're seeing and what they're seeing. So I feel like we have a good sense of the social sphere, right? So we're not just Twitter, but we can also get in those other ideas. But that would be a big project. It'd be fun. Yes.
So when we see things like weather and politics and so forth, is that concept topics at work?
Yes, so that's the concept matrix that we're using off of Wikipedia's. We're actually working, like, the fun part of that is, like, we can define how those are sourced, so, and it's also the hard part, so, but it's fun.
So along those lines, how big is that sort of set of concepts and topics that you're pulling out of this? How much time did you spend to put that together?
So the first version of this was done around like a year and a half ago, and it was a lot of hand tuning, I would say. We handpicked around 50 topics, and then looked at what words we could, how we would define those and how that affected the URLs that were coming through and how they were defined. Right now we're working on getting a more robust way, so like creating a test set and looking at how we can get Lexalytics to really match that test. Okay, thank you.